Tiana's hands trembled as she scrubbed the marble countertop for the third time, tears streaming down her face and mixing with the cleaning solution. The kitchen of the Romano estate was silent, except for her quiet sobs. She thought she was alone. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her until his voice cut through the air like a blade. "Who did this to you?" Her blood turned to ice. She spun around, nearly dropping the sponge, and found Antonio Rossi standing in the doorway. The most powerful mafia boss in New York, her employer, the man whose mansion she'd been cleaning for 3 months without ever speaking more than 2 words to him. His dark eyes weren't on her face. They were fixed on her arm, where the sleeve of her uniform had slipped up, revealing the purple and yellow bruises that circled her wrist like a bracelet. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she quickly pulled the sleeve down, but it was too late. He'd seen everything. "Mr. Rossi, Her voice cracked. She couldn't find the words. He took a step closer, and despite his expensive suit and the aura of danger that surrounded him like cologne, his expression wasn't angry. It was something else entirely, something that terrified her more than his reputation ever could. Fury, pure cold fury, but not directed at her. "I asked you a question, Tiana." His voice was dangerously soft. "Who did this to you?" If you want to discover how Tiana ended up working in the most dangerous mansion in New York, and what Antonio did when he learned the truth about her bruises, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one to life. 3 months earlier, Tiana Green had stood outside the iron gates of the Rossi estate with her heart in her throat and a crumpled job listing in her hand. The ad had been vague. Domestic staff needed. Discretion required, excellent pay. But the salary listed was triple what she made at her other 2 jobs combined. She needed this, desperately. At 26, Tiana worked as a waitress at a diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., cleaned offices from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and barely slept. Her studio apartment in the Bronx cost more than she could afford. Her student loans were drowning her, and her mother's medical bills kept piling up. When her mum's MS had progressed last year, Tiana had dropped out of NYU's nursing program to take care of her. She'd been invisible her whole life, the scholarship kid, the black girl in predominantly white spaces, the one who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Being invisible had become her survival strategy, but standing at those gates, looking up at the massive stone mansion with its manicured lawns and fountain, she felt smaller than ever. A man in a black suit, clearly security, had appeared at the gate. "You're here for the position?" "Yes, sir." "Tiana Green. I have an appointment with—" "Follow me." The interview had been conducted by Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, a stern woman in her 60s who spoke with brutal efficiency. "You'll work Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You clean, you cook when needed, you don't ask questions. Most importantly, you don't speak to Mr. Rossi unless he speaks to you first. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." The previous girl lasted 2 weeks. She couldn't handle the atmosphere. Mrs. Chen's eyes had been sharp. "This is not a normal household. Can you handle that?" Tiana thought about her mother's medication that cost $3,000 a month. She thought about the eviction notice on her door. She thought about eating ramen for the 5th night in a row. "I can handle anything." She'd started the next day. The Rossi estate was exactly what she'd expected from a mafia boss, excessive, opulent and cold. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, imported Italian furniture. She cleaned 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a library, a gym, and a kitchen bigger than her entire apartment. Most days she never saw Antonio Rossi at all. He was a ghost in his own house, leaving early and returning late. But she felt his presence everywhere, in the security cameras that tracked every movement, in the men in dark suits who patrolled the grounds, in the hushed phone conversations in Italian that echoed through the halls, in the bulletproof windows and the panic room disguised as a wine cellar. Tiana kept her head down and did her work. She was good at being invisible, until Marcus showed up. He'd been her boyfriend for 8 months. Charming at first, attentive, but recently he'd started showing his true colors, the criticism, the controlling behavior, the way he gripped her arm too tight when he was angry, leaving marks she had to cover with long sleeves. "Why are you working for some mobster?" he demanded 2 weeks ago, his fingers digging into her wrist. "You think you're too good for me now? Making all this money?" "Marcus, you're hurting me. You don't know what hurt is." His eyes had been cold. "But you're gonna learn if you keep disrespecting me." She'd tried to break up with him. Twice. But Marcus didn't take no for an answer. He'd shown up at her apartment at the diner, outside the estate gates. His messages had gone from pleading to threatening. Last night had been the worst. He'd grabbed her in the parking lot of her building, slamming her against her car. "You think you can just leave me? After everything I've done for you?" The bruises on her arms were from his hands. The split lip she'd covered with foundation was from when she'd tried to pull away and he'd shoved her face first into the car door. She'd called in sick to her other jobs, but couldn't afford to miss a day at the Rossi estate. So she'd come to work, covered the bruises as best she could, and tried to hold it together. She'd been doing fine until she'd found herself alone in the kitchen, scrubbing counters that were already clean, and the dam had finally broken. And then Antonio Rossi had walked in. Now standing in front of him with tears on her face and her secret exposed, Tiana realized her invisibility had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. "It's nothing, Mr. Rossi," she whispered, backing toward the sink. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I should get back to work." "Stop." One word, but it froze her in place. He moved closer, and she could see the details she'd only glimpsed from afar. The sharp jawline shadowed with stubble, the slight scar above his left eyebrow. The way his tailored suit couldn't quite hide the powerful build underneath, the neck tattoo that disappeared beneath his collar, some kind of script in Italian. He was devastatingly handsome, in a way that made him more dangerous, not less. "Look at me," he said quietly. She forced herself to meet his eyes. They were dark brown, almost black, and burning with an intensity that made her breath catch. "How long has this been happening?" "Mr. Rossi, please." "How long?" The command in his voice left no room for deflection. "A few weeks," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who is he?" "My boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend. I'm trying to—" Her voice broke. "I'm trying to leave him, but he won't—" "His name?" "Marcus. Marcus Thompson." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "But please, you don't have to. I can handle it. I don't want to cause any trouble. I need this job, Mr. Rossi. Please don't fire me." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or was it pain? "Fire you?" He shook his head slowly. "Tiana, I'm not going to fire you." The way he said her name, like he'd been thinking it, knowing it, sent a shiver down her spine. "You're not?" "No." He pulled out his phone. "But you're not going back to your apartment tonight. You're staying here." "What?" "No. I can't." He was already typing. "Dante, I need you to send a team to this address." He rattled off her apartment address. How did he know where she lived, and continued, "Pack up everything carefully. I want it done in an hour." "Mr. Rossi," he held up a hand, still on the phone, "and I need a full background check on a Marcus Thompson. Everything. I want to know what he had for breakfast this morning." He paused. "Also, put 2 men on surveillance. If he goes anywhere near Tiana Green's building, I want to know immediately." He ended the call and looked at her. Really looked at her, in a way no one had in years. Like she wasn't invisible at all, like she mattered. "You work for me now," Antonio said, his voice soft but absolute. "That means you're under my protection. No one touches what's mine." Tiana's heart stuttered at those last words. She should have been terrified, she should have run. This man was a criminal, a killer, someone mothers warned their daughters about. But for the first time in weeks, she felt safe. The guest room Antonio assigned her was bigger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate gardens, now illuminated by soft lights in the darkness. The bed was a king-sized monstrosity, with silk sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. There was an ensuite bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, and a walk-in closet currently empty, except for the few belongings his men had brought from her apartment. Tiana stood in the middle of the room, still in her cleaning uniform, trying to process what had just happened. 1 minute she'd been crying in the kitchen. The next, the most dangerous man in New York was ordering his men to move her into his mansion and run surveillance on her ex-boyfriend. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting Mrs. Chen. Instead, Antonio entered, and the room suddenly felt much smaller. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and more tattoos. Italian words she couldn't quite read spiraling up his skin. "I brought you this." He held out a first aid kit. "For your injuries." "I'm okay." "Tiana." He set the kit on the nightstand and turned to face her fully. I need you to stop pretending you're okay when you're not." The gentleness in his voice broke something inside her. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks and she hated herself for it. She'd survived so much by being strong, by never showing weakness. But something about the way Antonio looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding, made her walls crumble. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping her face. I'm not usually like this. You have nothing to apologize for." He moved closer, slow and careful, like approaching a wounded animal. "May I see?" She knew what he was asking. Slowly she rolled up her sleeves, revealing the full extent of the bruises. His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath the skin, but his hands were impossibly gentle as he opened the first aid kit. "This might sting," he warned, dabbing antiseptic on a scrape she'd gotten when Marcus shoved her. She flinched but didn't pull away. His touch was so different from Marcus's, careful where Marcus had been rough, protective where Marcus had been possessive. "Why are you doing this?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "You don't even know me." Antonio's hands paused. When he looked up, his dark eyes held something she couldn't quite name. "I know enough." "What does that mean?" He continued working on her injuries, his movements precise. "It means I know you work 3 jobs to take care of your mother. I know you dropped out of nursing school when she got sick. I know you're brilliant. You were on the dean's list before you left. I know you're the hardest worker I've ever employed. And I know," his voice dropped lower, more intense, "that you deserve better than some coward who puts his hands on you." Tiana's breath caught. You know all that about me?" A faint smile touched his lips. "I make it my business to know everything about the people in my house. But I'm just—" "Don't." The word was sharp. "Don't diminish yourself. You're not just anything, Tiana." Their eyes met, and the air between them shifted, charged with something electric and dangerous. Tiana had never believed in instant connections. In the fairy tales her mother used to read her, but sitting here with Antonio Rossi, carefully bandaging her wounds, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. A phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Antonio pulled out his cell, his expression darkening as he read the message. "What is it?" Tiana asked, anxiety spiking. "Your ex-boyfriend just showed up at your apartment building. He's trying to get in." Antonio's voice was ice. "Don't worry. My men won't let him anywhere near your things." Tiana's hands started shaking. "He's going to be so angry." "Let him be angry." Antonio's hand covered hers, warm and solid. "He can't touch you here. This estate has better security than the Pentagon. You're safe. For how long? I can't hide here forever. I have jobs, responsibilities. You have one job now. Here." His thumb traced a gentle circle on the back of her hand, and she wondered if he realized he was doing it. "As for your mother's care, I've already arranged for the best MS specialist in the city to take over her treatment. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, she's the best." Tiana pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. "No, absolutely not. I can't accept that. It's already done. Mr. Rossi—" "Antonio." He stood as well, and suddenly they were close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody. "When we're alone, call me Antonio." "Antonio," she corrected, her heart racing. "I appreciate everything you're doing, but I can't be in debt to you. I can't—" "This isn't about debt." He stepped closer and she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "This is about making sure you're taken care of. Both you and your mother." "Why?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "Why do you care?" For a long moment he didn't answer. His eyes searched hers, and she saw something flicker in their depths, something vulnerable beneath all that power and control. "Because," he finally said, his voice rough, "I know what it's like to feel helpless, to watch someone you love suffer and not be able to stop it. And I have the power to help you, Tiana. So why wouldn't I?" Before she could respond, his phone rang. He answered it with a curt, "What?" then listened, his expression growing darker. "Handle it," he said into the phone. "I don't care what you have to do. Make sure he understands that Tiana Green is off limits." A pause. "Permanently." He hung up and looked at her. "Marcus tried to force his way into your building. The police have been called. He'll be arrested for trespassing and violating the restraining order. I don't have a restraining order. You do now. I had my lawyer file it an hour ago." Tiana should have been angry at the presumption, at the way he was taking control of her life without asking. But all she felt was overwhelming relief. "Thank you," she whispered. Something in Antonio's expression softened. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the details, but tonight just let yourself breathe." He turned to leave, but Tiana's voice stopped him at the door. "Antonio?" He looked back. "Why do you have 12 bedrooms but live here alone?" It was a bold question, maybe too bold, but she'd seen the way he moved through this massive house, a king in an empty castle. His smile was sad. "Same reason you work yourself to exhaustion. Sometimes being alone is easier than risking getting hurt again." And with that cryptic statement he left, closing the door softly behind him. Tiana stood in the opulent room, her mind spinning. She'd woken up this morning as an invisible maid in a dangerous man's house. Now she was under his protection, sleeping in his guest room, and feeling things she had no business feeling for someone like Antonio Rossi. She touched her hand where he'd held it, where his thumb had traced those gentle circles. This was dangerous. He was dangerous. But for the first time in months, as she climbed into the silk sheets and turned off the light, Tiana felt safe enough to sleep without nightmares. Tiana woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a confused moment didn't know where she was. Then memory flooded back. Antonio finding her in the kitchen, the first aid kit, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. She checked her phone. 7:30 a.m. Her shift was supposed to start at 8. She dressed quickly in her uniform, though it felt strange now wearing a maid's outfit in a room clearly meant for guests, and headed downstairs. The mansion was quiet except for the distant sound of voices from the kitchen. When she entered, she found Mrs. Chen directing 2 younger maids she'd never seen before. "Miss Green." Mrs. Chen's expression was unreadable. "Mr. Rossi left instructions that you're to have breakfast before starting your day. Sit. I can just grab something quick." Those weren't suggestions. Mrs. Chen gestured to the breakfast table, where a full spread was laid out. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, coffee. "Mr. Rossi was very clear." Tiana sat feeling awkward as one of the other maids, a young Latina woman, poured her coffee. "I'm Carmen," the woman said with a friendly smile. "Don't worry, we're not judging. Whatever happened with the boss, it's your business." "Nothing happened," Tiana said quickly. "He's just helping me with a situation." Carmen and the other maid exchanged glances that said they didn't quite believe her. Mrs. Chen set a plate of eggs in front of Tiana. "Eat. Then I need you to organize the library. Mr. Rossi has been acquiring new books and they're stacked everywhere." The library was Tiana's favorite room in the mansion. 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling shelves, a rolling ladder, leather chairs, and windows that overlooked the garden. She'd sneaked peeks at the titles before, first editions of Italian literature, philosophy, art history, not what she'd expected from a Mafia boss. She spent the morning sorting and cataloguing, losing herself in the familiar comfort of organizing. It reminded her of her brief time at NYU, studying in the library between shifts, dreaming of a different life. "You read Italian?" Tiana nearly dropped the book she was holding. Antonio stood in the doorway, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a car, his dark hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. "A little," she admitted, setting down the copy of Dante's Inferno. "I took 2 years in high school." He moved into the room and she was acutely aware of how alone they were. "Why Italian?" "My grandmother was Italian, from Sicily. She died when I was 10, but she used to tell me stories about the old country." Tiana ran her fingers over the book's spine. Learning the language made me feel closer to her. Something flickered in Antonio's eyes. "My grandmother was from Sicily too. Palermo. Mine was from Catania." They shared a smile, and Tiana felt that dangerous pull again, the connection that shouldn't exist between a maid and a Mafia boss. "Read something," Antonio said suddenly. "What?" "From the book, in Italian." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened to a random page. "Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la diritta via era smarrita." "In the middle of the journey of our life, I found myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost," Antonio translated, his voice low and rough. "Your accent is beautiful." Heat crept up Tiana's neck. "It's probably terrible." "It's perfect." He was closer now, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "You're full of surprises, Tiana Green. Is that a good thing?" "The best thing." The air between them crackled with tension. Tiana knew she should step back, maintain the professional distance that was appropriate, but she couldn't move. Antonio's phone shattered the moment. He answered with a frustrated, "What?" His expression changed as he listened, hardening into something cold and dangerous. When? A pause. I'll handle it. Tell Dante I want everyone on alert. He hung up and looked at Tiana. Marcus posted bail this morning. Fear spiked through her. What? Don't worry, I have men watching him 24/7. He won't get within a mile of you. Antonio's hand came up, almost touching her cheek, before he seemed to catch himself and pulled back. I need to take care of some business today. Will you be all right here? I'll be fine. I have work to do. Tiana. He waited until she met his eyes. If you need anything at all, you call me. Not Mrs. Chen, not my men, me. Understood? She nodded, not trusting her voice. After he left, Tiana tried to focus on the books, but her mind kept drifting. To the way Antonio looked at her, the barely there almost touch of his hand, the protective fury in his eyes when he talked about Marcus. She was in dangerous territory. Antonio Rossi wasn't some corporate executive or struggling artist. He was a criminal, a man who'd probably ordered deaths before breakfast. Getting involved with him, even thinking about getting involved with him, was insane. But when had her heart ever listened to logic? The day passed in a blur of organizing and cataloging. Around 4 p.m. she took a break to check her phone and found a text from an unknown number. This isn't over, Tiana. You're mine. You'll always be mine. Your new boyfriend can't protect you forever. Her blood ran cold. Marcus. Somehow he'd gotten a new number. Before she could decide what to do, her phone rang. Antonio. You got a text from him. It wasn't a question. How did you... I'm monitoring your phone. For your safety. Send me the screenshot. She should have been angry about the invasion of privacy. Instead, she felt relieved as she forwarded the message. I'm coming home, Antonio said. Don't leave the library. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Antonio, you don't have to... 20 minutes, Tiana. Stay put. He arrived in 15. Tiana heard the commotion before she saw him. Raised voices, rapid footsteps. Then, Antonio burst into the library, slightly out of breath, his suit jacket gone and his shirt sleeves rolled up. Are you all right? He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face. Did he contact you any other way? Just the text. I'm fine. You're shaking. She was. She hadn't even realized it. Antonio pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head. I've got you, he murmured. Nothing's going to happen to you. I promise. Tiana let herself lean into him, breathing in his scent, feeling the solid warmth of his body. This was wrong. This was so wrong. But it felt so right. I'm scared, she admitted into his shirt. I know. His hand stroked her hair, soothing. But fear is temporary. I'm going to end this, Tiana. Marcus Thompson is going to learn what happens when he threatens what's mine. There it was again. That possessive claim that should have set off alarm bells, but instead made her feel cherished. She pulled back enough to look up at him. What are you going to do? Nothing that will come back on you. Trust me. I barely know you. Then let me tell you who I am. He didn't release her, keeping one hand on her waist. My name is Antonio Rossi. I'm 38 years old. I run the Rossi family, which has controlled organized crime in New York for 3 generations. I've done things I'm not proud of, made decisions that keep me up at night, but I've never hurt an innocent person, and I've never let someone under my protection come to harm. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know exactly who you're trusting. No illusions. Tiana's hand came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat, strong and steady. And if I said I wanted to trust you anyway? His eyes darkened. Then I'd say you're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. Tiana. Her name was a warning and a plea. What if I don't want to be sensible? The words spilled out before she could stop them. What if I'm tired of being careful and invisible and always doing the right thing? Then I'd have to be sensible for both of us. But his hand tightened on her waist, contradicting his words. You work for me. I'm responsible for you. Getting involved would be... What? She tilted her head back, challenging him. Wrong? Dangerous? Inappropriate? All of the above. But you want to anyway. It wasn't a question. She could see it in the way he looked at her, in the tension in his body, in the way his gaze kept dropping to her lips. What I want is irrelevant, Antonio said roughly. You've been through trauma. You're vulnerable. Taking advantage of that would make me no better than Marcus. I'm not a child, Antonio. I know what I'm feeling. And what are you feeling? The challenge hung in the air between them. Tiana knew this was the moment. She could step back, laugh it off, maintain the safe distance, or she could be honest. Safe, she whispered. For the first time in months, I feel safe and seen, and she took a breath. And like, maybe I could be someone other than the invisible girl who just survives. Antonio's control cracked. She saw it in his eyes a second before he moved, his hand sliding up to cup her face as he leaned down. The kiss was nothing like she'd expected. It wasn't rough or demanding. It was tender, almost reverent, like he was handling something precious and breakable. His lips moved against hers with devastating gentleness, and Tiana felt herself melting into him. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. That was, Tiana started. A mistake, Antonio finished, but he didn't let go of her. I shouldn't have. Don't. She pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't take it back. Tiana. His phone rang again. He closed his eyes briefly, clearly frustrated before answering. This better be important, Dante. His expression shifted as he listened. What? When? A pause. Lock down the estate. No one in or out. I'll be right there. He ended the call and looked at Tiana with barely controlled fury. Marcus just tried to ram the front gate with his car. My men stopped him, but he's outside right now, screaming your name. Tiana's blood turned to ice. He's here. He's not getting in, Antonio said firmly, already moving toward the door. Stay in the library. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Mrs. Chen. Antonio, wait. He turned back, cupped her face one more time. Trust me, I'll handle this. Then he was gone and Tiana was alone with her racing heart and rising panic. She locked the door as instructed, then moved to the window that overlooked the front gate. Even from this distance, she could see the commotion. A beat-up sedan crashed against the iron bars, security guards surrounding it, and Marcus being dragged out, still shouting. Her phone buzzed. A text from Antonio. Stay away from the windows. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. This was her fault. She'd brought this chaos into Antonio's life, into his home. Marcus was unhinged, and now he knew where she was. Minutes crawled by. 10. 20. Tiana paced the library, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. What if Marcus had a gun? What if someone got hurt? What if Antonio... The thought of Antonio getting hurt because of her made her stomach twist. Finally, a knock on the door. Tiana, it's me. She unlocked it, and Antonio entered, looking composed, but with a dark glint in his eyes that spoke of barely controlled violence. Is he... gone? The police took him. He'll be charged with violating the restraining order, destruction of property and making terroristic threats. With his record, he's looking at serious prison time. Antonio's jaw tightened. But that's not enough. What do you mean? He moved to the window, looking out at the damaged gate. Men like Marcus don't stop. They escalate. Even if he goes to prison, he'll find a way to get to you eventually. Hire someone, manipulate someone, wait until he's released. Fear gripped Tiana's chest. So what do we do? Antonio turned to face her, and the intensity in his expression took her breath away. We make sure he never wants to come near you again. How? Let me worry about that. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. But first, I need to know something. Are you willing to trust me completely, to let me protect you the way I know how? There was something ominous in the question, something that hinted at the darker side of Antonio's world. But looking into his eyes, Tiana knew her answer. Yes, even if it means crossing lines you never thought you'd cross. What are you saying, Antonio? He pulled her to the leather couch, sitting beside her but maintaining enough distance to let her think clearly. Marcus needs to disappear from your life completely, not just legally, psychologically. He needs to understand, down to his bones, that touching you means signing his own death warrant. You're not going to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Kill him. No, I don't eliminate problems that can be solved other ways. Antonio's thumb traced circles on her hand. But I am going to ensure he has the most terrifying night of his life, and in the morning he's going to voluntarily confess to every crime he's ever committed, accept a plea deal for maximum prison time, and sign a document giving up any rights to contact you for the rest of his life. Don't ask questions you don't want answered. Tiana should have been horrified. This was conspiracy, intimidation, probably a dozen other crimes, but all she felt was relief. Okay, she whispered. Antonio's eyes widened slightly, like he'd expected her to protest. Okay? I trust you. Something raw and vulnerable flashed across his face. You shouldn't, but I do. She squeezed his hands. You've shown me more care in 2 days than Marcus did in 8 months. You've protected me, respected me, seen me, so yes, I trust you. Tiana. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. You have no idea what you do to me. Then tell me. For a long moment, he just looked at her, his dark eyes searching hers. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. I haven't let anyone close in 5 years, not since my wife died. Tiana's breath caught. You were married? Gabriella. She was my childhood sweetheart. We grew up in the same neighborhood in Brooklyn, back before my family had money or power. She knew what I was, what I'd become, and she loved me anyway. His voice cracked slightly. Breast cancer took her 3 years after our wedding. I watched her waste away, helpless to do anything. All my money, all my power, and I couldn't save her. Antonio, I'm so sorry. I swore I'd never let anyone that close again. It hurt too much. He looked at their joined hands. And then you walked into my kitchen with tears on your face and bruises on your arms, and something in me just broke open. I saw you, Tiana. Really saw you. And I couldn't look away. Tears slipped down Tiana's cheeks. I see you too. I'm not a good man. You're a better man than you think. She cupped his face, making him look at her. You could have ignored me, fired me for being a liability, but instead, you've given me safety, dignity, and hope. That's not a bad man, Antonio. That's a man who's been hurt and is still choosing to care. His control finally shattered. He pulled her into his lap, cradling her like she was something precious, and buried his face in her neck. I can't lose you, he whispered against her skin. I just found you and I can't lose you. You won't. Tiana wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. I'm right here. They stayed like that for a long time, 2 broken people finding solace in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Antonio's eyes were suspiciously bright. I need to go take care of Marcus, he said, his voice hoarse. But when I get back, we'll talk, Tiana finished. Really talk, about all of this. About what happens next. Yes. He stood, helping her to her feet. Mrs. Chen will bring you dinner. There are guards posted outside the library and your room. You're safe here. When will you be back? By midnight. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Get some rest. Tomorrow everything changes. After he left, Tiana sank back onto the couch, her mind reeling. She'd just agreed to let a Mafia boss handle her ex-boyfriend. She'd admitted feelings for a man who lived in a world of violence and danger. She'd crossed every line she'd ever drawn for herself, and yet she didn't regret any of it. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart jumped, thinking it was Marcus again, but the message made her blood run cold. You think the Mafia boss will protect you? He's using you, sweetie, just like he used his dead wife. Ask him about the real reason Gabriella died. Ask him why the cancer treatment stopped. Tiana stared at the screen, her hands shaking. This wasn't Marcus. The writing style was too different, too calculated. Someone else was trying to drive a wedge between her and Antonio, but the seed of doubt had been planted. What if Antonio wasn't who he seemed? What if... No. She pushed the thought away. This was psychological warfare, meant to isolate her. Antonio had been nothing but honest with her, hadn't he? She saved the screenshot and decided to show it to Antonio when he returned. If he had nothing to hide, he'd explain. And if he did? Tiana pushed that possibility away, too. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it. Antonio returned at 11:47 p.m. Tiana had been unable to sleep, pacing her room despite Mrs. Chen's insistence that she rest. When she heard his footsteps in the hallway, she opened her door to find him standing there, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened and shadows under his eyes. It's done, he said quietly. Marcus signed everything. He'll be in prison for at least 15 years. He'll never contact you again. What did you do to him? Nothing permanent, just educated him about the consequences of his choices. Antonio's eyes were hard. He won't make the same mistake twice. Tiana should ask for details. She should demand to know exactly what methods Antonio had used. But part of her didn't want to know, and that scared her almost as much as Marcus had. I need to show you something, she said, pulling out her phone. Antonio's expression darkened as he read the text. Who sent this? I don't know. But Antonio... She took a breath. Is it true? About Gabriella's treatment? For a moment she thought he'd shut down, turn cold and distant, but instead He sat heavily on the edge of her bed, suddenly looking every one of his 38 years. "Yes and no," he said quietly. "The treatment didn't stop because I wanted it to. It stopped because Gabriella asked me to stop." Tiana sat beside him. "What do you mean?" "The chemo was killing her faster than the cancer. She was in constant pain, unable to eat, barely able to recognize me. The doctors said if we continued she might live another 6 months. Might. More likely 3, and all of them in agony." His voice cracked. "She begged me to let her go, to let her die with dignity, pain-free in her own home. Oh, Antonio, I said no at first. I couldn't accept it. I kept pushing the treatments even when she cried and pleaded. And then one night she looked at me and said, 'If you love me, you'll let me go in peace.'" Tears slipped down his face, and he didn't wipe them away. "So I did. I stopped the treatments. We had 2 weeks together, real time, where she could smile and eat and remember who we were, and then she died in my arms, pain-free and at peace." Tiana took his hand, her own tears falling. "You gave her the greatest gift you could. But people talk. They say I killed her by stopping treatment, that I wanted her money, her family connections. They don't know they weren't there." He looked at Tiana with raw pain in his eyes. "I loved her more than my own life, and letting her go was the hardest thing I've ever done. I believe you." "Why?" The question was barely a whisper. "After everything you've seen, everything you know about me, why would you believe me?" "Because I see who you are when you think no one's watching, the way you treat your staff with respect, the way you cried when you talked about your wife, the way you've protected me without asking for anything in return." Tiana cupped his face. "You're a good man in a bad world, Antonio Rossi, and I'm falling for you." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "You shouldn't. I'll only bring you pain. Maybe, or maybe you'll bring me joy." She waited until he opened his eyes. "I'm willing to take that risk. Tiana, I know what you are. I know what you do, and I'm choosing you anyway." Something broke in Antonio. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was his lifeline, and pressed his face into her hair. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Let me decide what you deserve." They held each other as the clock struck midnight, 2 damaged souls finding unexpected solace in each other's arms. When they finally pulled apart, Antonio's expression had shifted, still vulnerable, but also determined. "If we do this, if we really do this, there are things you need to know. Dangers you'll face, enemies who'll try to use you against me. I'm not afraid. You should be." He stood, pulling her up with him. "But I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. You'll have guards, security, training. You'll learn how to navigate my world." "Our world," Tiana corrected. "If I'm choosing this, it's our world now." A slow smile spread across Antonio's face, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Our world," he agreed. "And in our world, you're not an employee anymore." "Then what am I?" He pulled her close, his hands settling on her waist. "Mine. And I'm yours, if you'll have me." "Yes," she breathed. The kiss was different this time, deeper, more passionate, full of promise. Tiana lost herself in it, in him, in the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Antonio rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow I introduce you to my family, my people. They'll need to know you're under my protection, permanently. Will they accept me? They'll accept what I tell them to accept, but Tiana," he pulled back to look at her seriously, "this will change everything. Your life as you knew it is over. Are you sure?" She thought about her cramped apartment, her 3 jobs, the constant struggle to survive. She thought about Marcus's abuse, the fear that had become her constant companion, the invisibility that had defined her existence. And then she looked at Antonio, dangerous, powerful, damaged, and somehow perfect for her. "I've never been more sure of anything." The next morning, Tiana woke in her own bed, but everything had changed. When she came downstairs, she found Antonio waiting for her, along with Mrs. Chen and several men in suits she recognized as his top enforcers. "Gentlemen, Mrs. Chen," Antonio said, his hand settling possessively on Tiana's lower back. "I want you to meet Tiana Green. She's no longer staff. She's under my personal protection, and anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, sir," echoed through the room. Mrs. Chen's stern expression softened into something almost like approval. "Welcome to the family, Miss Green." Over the following weeks, Tiana's life transformed. Antonio enrolled her mother in the best MS care facility in the state. He paid off all of Tiana's debts. He insisted she finish her nursing degree, hiring tutors to help her catch up. But more than the material changes, it was the emotional transformation that mattered most. Antonio was patient with her fears, gentle with her trauma, and devoted in ways she'd never experienced. He introduced her to his world slowly, teaching her the rules and codes that governed it, and Tiana found her strength. She wasn't the invisible maid anymore. She was Antonio Rossi's woman, and in his world, that meant power and respect. 3 months after that first night in the kitchen, Antonio took her to his favorite restaurant, a small Italian place in Brooklyn that served food like his grandmother used to make. "I want to show you something," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Tiana's heart stopped. "Before you panic," Antonio said with a slight smile, "this isn't a ring. Not yet. We have time for that." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a pendant, a small key. "This is the key to the mansion, to my home. I want you to move in officially, not as staff, not as a guest, but as someone who belongs there, with me." Tears filled Tiana's eyes. "Antonio, I know we haven't known each other long. I know this is fast. But I also know that I've never felt this way about anyone except Gabriella, and I'm not going to waste time pretending I don't want forever with you." "Yes," Tiana whispered. "Yes, I'll move in. Yes, to all of it." He fastened the necklace around her throat, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Ti amo," he murmured against her lips. "I love you, Tiana Green. I love you too." As they sat in that small Brooklyn restaurant, eating pasta and laughing, Tiana thought about how far she'd come, from invisible maid to cherished partner, from victim to survivor to someone strong enough to choose her own path. She'd found love in the most unexpected place, with the most unlikely person. And while she knew their road wouldn't be easy, Antonio's world was dangerous and there would be challenges ahead, she also knew they'd face them together. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories start in the darkest places. Sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected sources, and sometimes the person who saves you is the one who needed saving too. 2 years later, Tiana stood in the garden of the Rossi estate, watching the sun set over the perfectly manicured lawns. She wore a simple white dress and the key necklace Antonio had given her, now paired with a stunning engagement ring. Inside the mansion, preparations were underway for their engagement party. The same kitchen where Antonio had first found her crying now bustled with caterers preparing for 200 guests. The library where they'd first kissed was decorated with flowers. Antonio came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "Your whole family is coming, the entire organization. They already love you. Mrs. Chen won't stop talking about how you reorganized the entire household management system. Dante says you're the only person besides me who can keep me in line." Tiana laughed, leaning back against him. "I graduated, you know, officially. Nursing degree, cum laude." "I know. I was there." Pride filled his voice. "And you start at Memorial Hospital next month. Because the head of their board owed you a favor. Because you're brilliant and capable." He turned her in his arms, looking down at her with such love it took her breath away. "Everything good in my life started the day you walked into my kitchen with tears on your face. You saved me, Tiana. We saved each other." He kissed her, soft and sweet, and Tiana marveled at how safe she felt in the arms of one of the most dangerous men in New York. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother, who was doing remarkably well on her new treatment. "So proud of you, baby girl. Your grandmother would be too." Tiana smiled through happy tears. She thought about that scared, invisible girl who'd stood outside these gates 2 years ago, desperate and alone. That girl would never have believed this could be her life, but it was, and it was beautiful. "Ready to face the crowd?" Antonio asked. "With you?" "Always." They walked back to the mansion hand in hand, ready to celebrate with family and friends, ready to face whatever challenges came next, ready for their future together. Because Tiana had learned that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest beginnings, and sometimes the man who seemed most dangerous was exactly the one who could make you feel most safe. Her journey from invisible maid to Antonio Rossi's fiancé had been unexpected, terrifying, and absolutely perfect. And this This love, this life, this man was worth every risk she'd taken. This story has reached its end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys emotional stories. New stories arrive soon. Until next time.